Somebody wants to sell your events.
Do you know where you're going to? Do you like the things that life is showing you? Where are you going to? Do you know? Those lyrics were sung by Diana Ross as the theme tune to a film called Mahogany. Now, Mahogany was a film all about a young girl called Tracy Chambers, who grew up in a poor neighborhood in Chicago. And Tracy had a dream. Tracy's dream was to become a top fashion designer. And her dream inspired her to do everything she possibly could to pursue that dream and make it become a reality. Along the way, she was spotted by a fashion photographer, a chap called Sean McAvoy. And Sean invited her to join him at the fashion capital of the world, on the catwalks in Rome. And before long, Tracy had become Sean's top fashion model. He gave her the stage name Mahogany. It didn't take long for Tracy to launch her own fashion design business, and before long, she was modeling and selling her own designs to the rich and famous. Well, I love music. I love listening to music, and I love playing music. Whenever I'm listening to music, it's rarely actually the lyrics that I'm paying attention to. Usually it's the bass line that I'm focused on. So when a friend of mine asked me if I'd like to start playing bass guitar in a band, well, I jumped at the chance. I hadn't been playing anything for a while, anything regularly for a while. So I was quite excited at the prospect of playing again. I've got an old bass guitar and a cheap combo amp. And I'd even played in a few gigs some 10 years previously. It wasn't until I got hold of a copy of the music and started practicing that I remembered we don't use music on stage. Not only would I have to learn the pieces, I'd have to memorize them in order to be able to perform on stage with the band. Now, some people have got really good memories. Do you know these people? They can remember names, faces, they can remember people and places. They're absolutely perfect to have on your team on those quiz nights. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. In fact, I like to put it this way. I've got a really good forgettery. It's improving with age. If there's anything you need forgetting, just let me know and I'll forget it for you. So for quite a while, I wrestled with the notion that I'd have to turn down the opportunity to play bass guitar. But my love for music and my passion for playing bass inspired me to push through and confront those inner voices that say, you'll never be able to do it. You'll never be able to remember the music. You'll never be able to do what you want to do. I can remember on one of my first outings, somebody in the audience asked the sound crew to turn the bass guitar up because they couldn't hear it, only to be told, I don't think he's playing anything at the moment. Well, I persevered and pushed through, and I found ways to help me memorize the music. And now I play regularly throughout the year. Today's topic is prize-winning leadership. Part one of prize-winning leadership is all about your dream and about something inspirational, something that inspires you to push through and confront those inner voices that say you'll never be able to remember the music, that say you'll never be able to do this thing that you're trying to do. I like to put it this way. Every dream needs a prize. That's an inspiring image of the future that produces passion in people and turns have to into want to. Part two of prize-winning leadership is all about delivering your dream. Do you get what you're hoping for? When you look behind you, there's no open door. What are you hoping for? Do you know? When I was growing up, I wanted to be an engineer and spent most of my early career managing engineering projects. The thing about engineers, if you know any engineers, they're really, really good with things. They can design things, they can create things, they can build things, they can even knock them down when they're finished with pretty effectively. but they're not very good with people. I learned that you can manage things, but you need to lead people. Why is that? Well, I found that's where I can make the biggest difference. I found that's where you can make the biggest difference in people's lives. If you can turn have to into want to. I found there's a great correlation, a key indicator between success and failure has a lot to do with use of effective leadership skills, of leading people well. You can get the best out of people if you can turn have to into want to. Why? Because then people motivate themselves to be great. So leadership, have we got any, who would like to define leadership? Who could define leadership? Any ideas on how we define leadership?
Doing things first.
Doing things first.
People want to follow.
Say again?
Leaders are people who follow.
People, they have followers. They're people that other people want to follow. Absolutely, yes. They blaze a trail. I like it. I like to think of a couple of definitions. One I particularly like is leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. I quite like the definition that says leadership is taking people from here to there. After all, if there's no there to go to, why lead people anywhere? On the reverse side, I like to think of leaders as if somebody who thinks he's leading but has no followers is simply taking a walk. So why don't I just take you through the 5 levels of leadership? Have you come across the 5 levels of leadership? The level 1 has to do with position. Level 1, it's all about your role. So you've been appointed to team leader. Maybe you've started your own business. You are the boss. So people follow you because they have to. You're the boss. That's level 1, the foundation level. Level 2 is all to do with permission and has to do with relationships. At level 2, people have got to know you. They're starting to like you and they're beginning to trust you. They follow you because they want to follow you. At level 3, this level 3 has to do with results. It has to do with production. At level 3, people are following you because they can see the results that you've achieved. They can see that you're doing the job. They can see you're achieving results for the organisation. They follow you because of the results that you've achieved. Level 4 is called people development. At level 4, people follow you not because of what you've done or because they like you, but they follow you because of what you've done for them. You're investing into your team. You're helping them to grow. You're helping them to develop. And then right at the top, we have what we call the pinnacle. At the very top, this has to do with reputation and respect. And it's for people who are recognised outside of their sphere of influence, people who are recognised outside of their job, their work. And so people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. Now, the interesting thing is that at levels 2 and 3, these sometimes get swapped around depending upon your personality type. Some people are naturally relationship focused. Some people find relationships come really easily, but maybe they struggle a bit with achieving results, so they get stuck at level 2. Other people are more results focused. These are the engineers amongst us. They're more results focused, so they're really good at achieving things for the organisation, but they struggle at the relationship level. Now, I like to think of it this way. If you get to the end of the week, and we were talking about this earlier, if you get to the end of the week and say, thank goodness it's Poets' Day, let's push off early, tomorrow's Saturday, we'll enjoy the weekend, and hey, next week will have to look after itself, then you're probably dealing with a level 1 leader. If you get to the end of the week and you say, haven't we had a fantastic week? We've had a great week this week. We've really enjoyed ourselves. We've had a blast. Okay, we didn't quite get everything done. There's a few deadlines that we missed, but hey, we had a good time, and that's what's important. Then probably you're a level 2 leader, and the results you're struggling with. If you get to the end of the week and say, we had a fantastic week, didn't we have a good week? We had a really good week this week. We got everything done. We nailed everything. Oh, okay. Christine went home, handed in a notice, and she's quit. Stephen went home crying, but hey, we got the job done. We got the job done. And that's what's important. Then you're probably leading at level 3 the results, but you're struggling with level 2. And it's when you get level 2 and level 3 working together that you can get to level 4, which stands on the kind of stands on the shoulders of levels 2 and 3, and that allows you to get to the next level. In terms of relationships, I can remember chatting with a friend of mine called Ernie, and we were just chatting at an event he was leading, a social event, and he spotted a couple across the room, and he said, "What do you know about those two over there? What's going on with them?" And I said, I don't think there's anything going on with them. I don't know any problem. He said something really curious. He said, don't you just get a vibe about them? And I said, Ernie, I must be a vibe-free zone. And to be honest, I didn't really understand what he was on about. Well, a few weeks later, I went out for my wedding anniversary, my wife and I and our 2 children. We went to the local Toby Carvery. And we saw this same couple sat at a table having a nice drink together. So whilst the family were finding the table and getting the chairs, getting the seats, I went across to say hello and just see how they were. So they'd seen us coming in. They said, what's the event? I explained it was our wedding anniversary. I think it was our 15th. And so we were just celebrating with the family, just a small function. I said, what are you here for? So Peter explained that they were just putting the finishing touches to the final settlement for their divorce. It turns out that Ernie was absolutely right. And I discovered that I got a lot to learn about relationships and vibes that day. Some years later, I was a non-exec director of a local organisation, local company. And the chief executive and the operations manager had got some dispute going on. This thing had been rocking on for ages. And so as chair of the board, I was asked to come in and see if I could do something to help. So I sat down and had a conversation with them both. And after a while, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. So I got the chief exec to explain to the operations manager the situation from her perspective, how she sees it, in such a way that she would nod her head and say, yes, you've got it, that's exactly right. That's how the situation is. And he did that the next 10 minutes, and she said, that's perfect. That's exactly how the situation is. That's how it is. Then I got the operations manager to explain to the chief executive from his perspective. And she spent the next 10 minutes entirely unable to explain anything from his perspective at all. So it's interesting. We see people through our eyes so often, don't we? We don't see people through their eyes. We see people through our experience and our background. We don't see people through their experience and their background. Really, really useful technique in developing relationships is to understand the worldview from the other person. In terms of results, I can remember a story about a young lady violinist, and she was the youngest. Apparently, at the time, she was the youngest solo violinist, female solo violinist, to perform at the Carnegie Hall in New York. And after the function, she performed a violin concerto to a rapturous applause. After the event, she was interviewed by the local media, and they said, "How is it that you've managed to get to such a high standard of performance at such a young age?" And in her answer, she had 2 words that I found really, really helpful, and I've remembered ever since. She said, "Planned neglect." After I've got up in the morning, I've had my breakfast, I've got dressed, everything else gets neglected. Emails get neglected, washing up gets neglected, laundry, housework, everything gets neglected until I've done my violin practice for the morning. So I'd like you to think about the next 6 weeks. We're at the beginning of June, so by the middle of July. What's one thing that only you can do that would have a really big impact on your career, on your business, your life? One thing that only you can do that would have a really big impact on your career or business. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. Before I do, the third section of the third part of prize-winning leadership has to do with personal development. And I'd just like to share a short story about 3 fellas who were employed to chop up some logs. And the first guy, they dropped him off to work. And when the foreman came around at the end of the day, he picked up the first fella, and he the guy got a massive pile of logs, an absolutely enormous pile of logs. He said, fantastic, well done, you've earned your money today, hop on board. They went on down to the next guy, and the next guy had got an even larger pile of logs. So he was amazed. He said, how have you managed to do that? I've been working all day, and yet you've managed to get more logs chopped than I have. And he said, well, I've got a secret. The secret is every half an hour or so, I take a short 5-minute break, and I rest and recuperate. So I'm ready to start again, refreshed. Wow, he says, I'll give that a try tomorrow, see if I can put that into practice. So they were carried on down to the third guy. And the third guy had got an even bigger pile of logs. So they said, what is it you've done? You've got more logs chopped than any of us. And he said, I've got a secret. Every half an hour or so, I take a 5-minute break. So I'm refreshed and relaxed. I'm ready to start again. And the second guy said, well, that's exactly what I did. But you've got even more logs than I have. So he said, whilst I'm relaxing, I sharpen my axe. What are we doing to sharpen our axe? What are we doing by way of self-development? Well, we said earlier that a vision, a dream needs a prize. That's an inspiring image of the future that produces passion in people and turns have to into want to. So if you're going to achieve that, you've probably heard the saying, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got. So to break the cycle, you have to do something new. And I call that your next exciting win. For your next exciting win, there are four stages you need to go through. So think about that one thing that only you can do, and maybe that's your next exciting win. The first thing is to define it clearly. Now, some people use SMART goals, some people use cost, quality, time. There's all sorts of techniques to define the what you're going to do and the how you're going to do it. But do you focus on the why you're going to do it? It needs to have something exciting. To be exciting, it needs to have two features. It needs to be something that's inspirational, something that's going to appeal to your creative side, that's going to turn your have to into want to. But it needs to have something that's rewarding, something that makes it worth your while pursuing the goal. So the first thing is to plan it, is to define it clearly by having something exciting that's inspirational and rewarding. The second step you need to do is to plan it carefully. Now, when you're planning, often, if for example, I wanted to lose £6 over the next 6 weeks, maybe that's something only I can do is lose £6 over the next 6 weeks. One thing I might do is to record my weight every week. I could be doing that, couldn't I? I could plan it that way. That isn't going to help me lose weight. That's only going to see how I've failed. The thing you need to do in order to achieve what you're pursuing, to achieve your next exciting win, is to define the inputs, not the outputs. If you can define the activities you're going to undertake, so we were talking earlier on, maybe it's how many cooked breakfasts you have, maybe it's how many times you have seconds and thirds at dinner, maybe you're going to record how many times you don't have a snack between meals. Maybe, as Martin and I were talking about, maybe you're going to keep an eye on how many times you feel peckish, how many times you just feel that bit of that hunger pang, and turn that into a feeling that you'd like to pursue. When you're feeling a bit peckish, then you're losing weight. Maybe it's those times you want to record. But however it works for you, record the inputs, not the outputs. The third thing is to show it clearly. There was a study performed some years ago that showed that simply by writing down the goal that you want to achieve, you're 42% more likely to achieve it, simply by writing it down. Now, if you can show your results conspicuously, put them in a place that people are going to see. Don't be frightened about it. Don't be coy about it. Show it conspicuously. And the fourth step is to revisit it continually. Get an accountability partner. It might be a spouse, it might be a relative, it might be a friend, a co-worker, somebody who's going to follow up with you regularly to check, are you on track? Have you performed okay today? And maybe if you haven't done so well today, to encourage you to get back on board and pursue it tomorrow. So every dream needs a prize. That's an inspiring image of the future that produces passion in people and turns have to into want to. And to achieve your prize, you need to pursue your next exciting win. For that, you need to define it clearly, plan it carefully, show it conspicuously, and revisit it continually. Thank you. That's Roger Fairhead from Leadership for Business.
Marvellous. Any questions? Rachel?
How long have you played violin?
Quite a long time. I started when I was 8.
Started when I was 7.
Did you? Wow. Come and have a go. Come and have a go.
Yeah, I know I play viola on the violin. So I'm on the big instrument now, so I'm on the viola.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
I have a 5-string violin at home, electric 5-string.
Ooh.
So it does the viola string as well as the 4 of the violin.
Yeah.
And putting that through an amp, it's just gorgeous. Some of those low notes are really rich, vibrant.
And do you have a favourite bass player?
I probably do. Yeah, Frank Willis. I have a signature bass. He's got a signature. I've got a 5-string fretted and a 5-string fretless Ibanez. Yeah, and it's a Frank Willis signature. It is, yeah. Yeah, you can bend stuff a bit.
Fantastic. Anyone else? I've got.
And that's
Yes.
just a non-music question. In the past, I've been very fortunate to have some really amazing leaders, well, what I would consider leaders, and some not so great leaders. I mean, what would you define? I think sometimes people get confused about a manager and a leader. What would you say was the difference?
I think the difference between a manager does things right, a leader does the right things is an often used phrase, isn't it? I think but I think it's more than that. I think a leader is somebody who's going to inspire you to want to do what you're doing. A manager will tell you all the list of things you need to do. And make sure and tick them off and make sure you've done them. And if you've done all that, you can go home. That's fine, thank you. But a leader is going to make you want to come into work, want to get these jobs done, and want to achieve. Okay.
Can I ask another one?
Yeah.
It's non-musical. Stick another thing there. So I think most people think that they've got a style, right? And mine's always been lead by example. But it's kind of because that's all I know. Are there different natural styles of leadership? And should you follow what you feel is your own natural style, or should you actively explore other styles that may not feel as comfortable?
My answer to that would look to work by Ken Blanchard. He did a lot of work around a topic called situational leadership. If you do a search on the web, you'll find loads of stuff on situational leadership. And he talks there about adapting your style to the style most needed by the people you're leading. So if they start when they get started, they need a high directional style. They need to know what to do. They don't know how to do it, so they need to know what to do. But once they've been working there for some years, they don't want you telling them all the detail of what they need to do. They just say, get on with it. And there's a kind of a process between those two.
Okay, so it changes.
It changes. The most effective leaders can adapt to the style needed by those that they're leading.